Hi everyone, this is our SAT vocabulary list number 8. Please at any time, if I'm going too fast, you need to pause the recording, stop it, take notes, make sure you get the word, the part of speech, and the definition. And I encourage you to write down anything that I say that might be helpful in remembering these words. So the first word is aboriginal, and it's an adjective describing somebody or a group of people that are very primitive. A lot of times this is being used to describe people who are unsophisticated or maybe not worldly. But if you think about the word being broken down, and you look and most of you will recognize the word original, right? If something's original, it's new, it's one of a kind. Aboriginal, think the first human, the first being. So the original beings, the original humans, think of natives. So somebody who is native would be very primitive. They would have a kind of a simple lifestyle, and that's where this word comes from. So I chose a picture of someone who clearly looks fairly native to help you remember that this word really is traced back to the idea of an early humans, but also has kind of evolved as a word that we use to describe anybody or any group of people who are less sophisticated, maybe in the way that they live is simpler, or in terms of their worldliness. The second word is adversity, and adversity is misfortune. And a lot of times you think about adverse, something that's like coming against you. It's unfavorable, it's antagonistic. And so if you experiencing adversity, you're experiencing this adverse fortune, this misfortune. So it's not a good word. It's got negative connotations. And so like a family who's watching their house burn down, right? They're facing adversity. They're going to have to rebuild their lives, rebuild their home. It's a daunting task. It's a lot to think about taking on as a family or facing as a family. Number 3 is chameleon. And this describes anything or anyone that is very changeable in appearance. And there's actually a lizard that is a chameleon, that its skin changes with the background. So it kind of blends into its surroundings. But when I was thinking of this word, I was thinking about people and there's so many different people who are able to change their looks or their behavior even to kind of fit into a variety of contexts. And I love Will Ferrell, and so I grabbed some pictures of him from various Saturday Night Live skits just to show how different he can look and how he assumes these very different roles to fit into these different situations that he's put in during his skits. So he's a good example of a chameleon. 4 is disenfranchise, and it's a verb, and it means to deprive of any right or privilege or power. So the word or the root dis, means not, or it actually means deprived of. And franchise, a lot of people might have heard the word franchise when you think about like fast food restaurants or stores. A lot of people can own a franchise, like one store out of a collection. So like if I want to own a Wendy's franchise. So if you think of that as like something, a store or restaurant that can be licensed, think about not having something like that. So disenfranchise, not to have the right, the power, the privilege. A lot of times we think of like, minority groups or people in poverty who have really been disenfranchised. They don't have the opportunities that are necessarily available to other people. So with that, they also don't have the power. Fickle is an adjective, and it means unduly changeable in feeling, judgment, purpose. And unduly changeable is kind of it's a little confusing. Someone who's fickle either can't make up their mind, or they might make it up, but then they change their mind very quickly. And there's actually a book called Little Miss Fickle, and in the book, this little character has a really hard time making even the simplest decisions, which makes everyone around her kind of go crazy because she keeps going back and forth because she's very fickle. And I just chose a picture of a person who looks like they're kind of contemplating something. She can't quite figure out if she wants this or she wants that. And so a lot of people are kind of fickle if they struggle to make a decision or they're not sure exactly what they want. incompetent, and this is the adjective form, the describing form of the word incompetence. And to be incompetent, if you're described that way, basically people are saying you don't have the ability, the desire, the abilities desired, or the skills needed for a particular purpose. So when I think about someone who is incompetent, sometimes I get frustrated if I go into a store and I feel like an employee is incompetent because they don't know where stuff is or they can't answer my questions about certain products. Here's kind of a funnier picture just of a hairdresser, right? This is supposed to be his job. He's supposed to be really good at cutting hair and clearly a little incompetent in this moment because he's just shaved a big bald spot in the back of this poor man's head. Number 7 is judicious, and someone who is described as judicious is prudent, wise. This might be another synonym for sagacious. Because it's someone who is going to really think about the pros and cons before they make a decision. And it's no surprise that this might remind you of the word judge. Judges tend to be fairly judicious. They try to bring a lot of wisdom to their decisions. 8 is mutiny, and mutiny is a rebellion against lawful or constituted authority. So anytime a person or, usually it's a small group of people, rebel against, the government or someone in authority, it's called a mutiny. It's like a little uprising. And so and this is during the Occupy Oakland, where there was kind of like this riot and you see the police in the back and there's this little mutiny happening where people are clearly angry. They want their voices heard. 9 is pervasive, and something that is described as pervasive thoroughly penetrates or permeates something. And this comes from the verb form pervade, and to pervade is the verb, the act of spreading. So something that is pervasive is very good at spreading. So for example, sometimes a student will come into the classroom and they will put on some hand lotion that's scented, and the smell is incredibly pervasive. It just takes over the entire room. Also, I think about some weeds and plants and ivy. Ivy is incredibly pervasive. It will grow almost anywhere, get into cracks, and doesn't need a whole lot to help it grow. So ivy would be an example of a plant that is very pervasive. 10 is reiterate, and re, the root means again. And so to reiterate means to say or to do something again. And so it's that repetition. So think of the re and the repetition to say again. And so I just have this little sign of take 2. So when actors are going through a scene, a lot of times they'll flub a line or the director will want to change something and they will have to do the scene again. They'll have to repeat their lines. So just a way to remember the word reiterate, to say again. Often in the classroom, I have to say things many times because people are not listening the first time. Scintillate. Scintillate is a verb, and it means to be animated or witty, to sparkle. And a lot of times this is used to describe things as well. The things can be very scintillating. But to scintillate is the act of being animated, witty, to sparkle, in terms of your personality. And so I just chose a picture of people who clearly are enjoying each other, seem to be having a wonderful time, and a lot of times that brings those connotations of it's a really scintillating experience. You're with people who scintillate. 12 is subterranean. Sub meaning below, terrain meaning anything pertaining or having to do with the earth. And it describes something that is situated, which means it's located, or occurring below the Earth's surface. So I have actually that's a long definition, so I'll give you a second. So I have a picture that's actually taken from clearly some kind of hole in the ground upwards because you can see the sky at the top. So wherever this picture is being taken from, it's occurring below the Earth's surface, right? Because the focal point, the top of the picture, you can see the sky. So, even you think about subways are, they're subterranean, they're below the Earth's surface. There's all kinds of, I'm sure, scientific and geological examples that you could use for things occurring below the Earth's surface as well. 13 is transparent. And transparent is the opposite, or kind of a good antonym for opaque. And something that is transparent is easy to see through, or if you're talking about kind of ideas, something that's transparent, either what someone says or how they act, if it's transparent, it's very easy to understand. And I have a picture of a window because windows are completely transparent. Sometimes windows are so transparent, people don't even realize they're there and will walk into sliding glass doors and things. Vitality is the state or quality of being alive or necessary to the existence of life or the continuing of life. Someone who has vitality is very healthy, and they tend to you get this sense that they have a great energy for life. And so there's lots of things that are necessary for life and the continued state of living. But I like to think of exercise. So exercise really, adds to a person's vitality. Keep your body moving, your energy levels up, keep your whole physical self very healthy. And then the last word is wile, and it's a noun, and it's an act or a means of cunning deception. So we had the word cunning before, and wile it has some similarities. Cunning, someone who's described as cunning, can demonstrate wile, which is kind of the means of a cunning deception. And when I think of this, I think of Wile E. Coyote, because the whole premise of this, show is that this coyote thinks he's very cunning, and tries to constantly deceive the roadrunner or catch the roadrunner or what have you, and always fails. So it's kind of this ironic spin on this word, which means an act of cunning deception, because in reality, he's actually not that effective in being cunning or deceptive.